we really, we know what our communities need. We want to help, develop the responses to our communities. Then we're kind of abdicating our responsibility to our communities. So we have to watch this. It's the follow the money admonition is very, very important in this sector right now. The other thing that's happening is that philanthropy is paying into businesses at this point. All of you know that as, in some ways as social entrepreneurism. And in some cases, they're just deciding they don't want to work with partners at all. They're just going to run their own programs. And so you'll see that in big foundations like the Pew Foundation and certain others. Some of them, they will work with partners, but they basically are designing the program that partners will work with. All of that is a little bit backwards, in my opinion. Again, we should be about the collective intentions of our communities, the best intentions of our communities towards themselves. And so we just have to be aware of how we need to balance those trends. As unemployment has kind of skyrocketed and then held on, it's affected other pieces of philanthropy, obviously. So while foundation assets plummeted to some extent, many of them were reduced by 30 to 40% originally as the recession started. Some of them have regained a lot of that. But United Ways have, especially in places where unemployment has been high and corporations have pulled out, United Way campaigns have suffered pretty significantly. So we have philanthropy and then government, which has kind of trickled down scarcity, even to local budgets. So you've got state budgets that are reduced, and then local budgets, local and municipal budgets that are reduced, and the federal budget, which has been reduced, and will be, we have a cliff coming with the end of stimulus funding at this point. You also have United Way campaigns not doing as well as they were. When you look at all of this, to a lot of us, and of course, again, it's very geographically sensitive, it looks like something of a disaster. But then we see the Giving USA numbers. Who saw those this year? Okay, these are important things for you to track because they give you a sense of where things are in the country overall, and then you can kind of measure where you are, but at least you know where the trend is. Giving USA put out a report this year. They put out a report at the end of, at the beginning of every year that basically says over the previous year, here's where giving was. Was it up? Was it down? In what areas was it up and down? This year they put out a report that basically said that giving was only down by 3.4% in the nonprofit sector. How many of you feel like you've experienced a greater dip than that? So a number of you have experienced a greater dip than that. We certainly have at the nonprofit sector. So I was curious because I had actually, in our ongoing research about what was going on in the sector, the numbers didn't make any sense to me. So I started looking at what was actually going on. And when you look at what's actually going on within those numbers, you see that, in fact, there's a decent portion of the money that's going to places where it is not available to the likes of us. So just even that number would have been 4.4% if you had excluded 5 multimillionaires, 5 billionaires who had put, I'm trying to remember the amount, $100 million each into foundations. Okay, that money now in the foundations, those assets are not going to be spent out anytime soon. So to some extent, it obfuscates what is really happening in the giving sphere. then we also know that money's going elsewhere other than to nonprofits. So in the end, it ends up making some sense. But in fact, what we're seeing is this kind of eroding of the resource base of the nonprofit sector. That doesn't mean that everybody's resource base is eroding. This stuff is also extremely sensitive to the field that you're in. So there's some fields that have actually done very well during the recession, partially because they're in areas that are very high profile. So at least on a federal level, you've seen a lot of money going into mortgage foreclosure prevention and into community health centers. But again, even though the money is flowing to those areas, there are some geographic locations that are not as blessed as others. I remember seeing this one round, and it was many, many millions of dollars that went out to the community health centers, and I think it was the third round of money that had gone out under this in the stimulus package to community health centers. And it literally missed the entire center of the country. It went to both coasts, and I would say that I think that Massachusetts, where I live, got most of it. And you know, partly you have to look at where's the kind of political pull. How is that being used? And what is it that's driving that kind of oddness? Because the money specifically was to be spent for facilities development and for electronic records, that transition to electronic records. On the East Coast and in Massachusetts, we're well on our way. We have huge campuses for our community health centers. They tend to be older in Massachusetts. Some of the first community health centers in the country were there. And so, you know, what you have to ask, why, you know? Well, Ted Kennedy came from Massachusetts, number one. And number two, that maturity of the community health center system means we have very expert grant writers and, you know, and a lot of kind of already in place requirements for that kind of money. And so the money, which really, if you looked just in terms of need, should have gone elsewhere, went to places where people were most able to kind of organize themselves to do these very kind of complex grant requests. This is, again, where groups like M&A come in. Because where, as individual organizations, you may not have capacity, if collectively you understand that capacity needs to be built for the sector, M&A should be able to help you to do that. Especially in a state like this where you have a large number of organizations who tend to be on the smaller side relative to states like Massachusetts or New York or Washington, D.C., not a state. That you need to somehow develop the capacity to make sure that you are competitive for that kind of federal money and that you're not ignored. Because things are extremely political and they're going to remain political for quite some time. All of this, basically, I visited an organization yesterday that does run a health clinic, and it's not a huge organization, and it is faced with enormous complexity. It is readying some proposals for health center funding. It's also trying to develop some relationships. Key relationships. It's looking at facilities development. It's looking at electronic records transitions. It is extremely complex. And the organization does not have a lot of overhead. It doesn't have a lot of administrative capacity that's really dedicated to the enormity of the change. So where does the resource for the change come from? Where does it come from? When you're facing that much complexity, what what has to be poured into the situation for it to work?
Money or volunteers?
How many of you feel like you're working with much more volume of work than you've had before?